And what's up, everybody? What is up? Welcome back. We are here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice, this time for the single game showdown slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. That's right, it's Monday Night Football, Las Vegas Raiders, Green Bay Packers. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner. This is a live Q&A. It's different. We've done a couple live videos on Mondays for the two-game slates. This is the first live showdown video that we've done. So if you have questions throughout the show, throw them in the chat. I'll go through my normal itinerary and schedule here. So if you are new, welcome. What we do, we talk about the injuries that impact the slate, low risk, high risk lineup construction tips, general showdown strategies, everything you need. So I'll go position by position. I'll go segment by segment, answer your questions in between each segment. You see the chat box there on the right. Throw your questions in there along the way. Let us know how you feel about these live showdown videos as opposed to the pre-recorded ones that I do before noon on these Monday and Thursdays. So let's get into it. And looking at the DraftKings screen here, Devontae Adams, I'll pull him up here, officially questionable, did not practice much all week. Did get in a limited practice on Saturday. He is expected to play. Toughed it out last week. AC joint sprain, it sounds like, typical to what we saw Brandon Ayuk deal with a couple of weeks ago, and he suited up. They'll give him a shot, maybe put him in a harness. Adams is going to play, so should be good to go. And risk of re-injury is there, so something to think about as you're building your lineups. But it would have to be a pretty bad re-injury for Adams to leave the game for a significant amount of time. On the Green Bay side, well, I guess also let's stick with Las Vegas because Jimmy Garoppolo is back after missing a week with the concussion. He's back. He's good to go. Now, the important injury is Aaron Jones for Green Bay. If you were with us the last time the Packers played, this was 10 days ago, talked about how every single player on that slate was technically overpriced because Christian Watson was coming back and because Aaron Jones was returning from his hamstring injury. That was the case. Every single player ended up overpriced. Guys were appropriately priced today until we got the Aaron Jones news, which was pretty surprising because Aaron Jones played in that game 10 days ago and seemingly came out unscathed, was limited in practice all week. I think most of us, including myself, didn't really think that it was an issue at all, just a formality that he was going to play. Then we get the news this morning and this afternoon that he's actually going to be inactive. So, as I've said many times on this show, as we've said in our content many times, Green Bay has one of the most conservative medical staffs in the entire league. So they've seen something that they don't like in Aaron Jones. He's not going to play tonight. So it's going to be A.J. Dillon, who was priced as if Aaron Jones was active. Before, 10 days ago, A.J. Dillon was priced at $7K or so. And as I said in that showdown preview video, he should have been priced at $5,200 or $4,800 with Aaron Jones in. And that's what he's priced at tonight at $4,600. So now we have the lead back for the Packers. This game is a coin flip roughly. Raiders are small favorites. A.J. Dillon, lead back, going to get the most touches here for the Packers, $4,600. Now is just the glaring value. Over on FanDuel, if we scroll down here, he is just $10K. So another glaring value where Aaron Jones was $13K on here. So now we have Dillon, extremely popular, and rightfully so. And honestly, I was looking at playing Dillon myself tonight before the Aaron Jones news because he's due for some regression in the touchdown department. You look at his expected fantasy points based on when and how often he's touched the ball in the field. 47 touches this year, 0 touchdowns for A.J. Dillon. Now, everyone gets bailed out and gets to play him anyways because he's underpriced. We do like him tonight, and he's going to get a lot of run. Behind him, they did call up Patrick Taylor. They actually had to sign him to the 53-man roster. They called him up so many times that those elevations, you get a grace of 3 elevations. They've already used all those on Patrick Taylor. They actually had to sign him to the active roster today. So Patrick Taylor, he's been getting the change of pace work behind A.J. Dillon. Let's bring up Patrick Taylor. He is $200 min price. We'll see him be pretty popular tonight, relatively speaking, for a showdown slate at $200. And then we also have Emmanuel Wilson, who I know a lot of beat reporters, a lot of fans are calling for Emmanuel Wilson to get more touches, seeing as how A.J. Dillon's been ineffective, seeing as how Patrick Taylor doesn't seem to be too in favor with the coaching staff. I mean, he started the season on the practice squad. Maybe Emmanuel Wilson gets some more touches tonight, but he will get a touch or two at least. So just something to think about there. If we look at how the touches and routes have been distributed for Green Bay, with Aaron Jones out of the lineup. So weeks 2 and 3 with Aaron Jones out of the lineup. Dillon has dominated the rush attempts. He had a pretty significant lead in routes heading into week 3. Patrick Taylor caught up with him there. And 39 routes for Dillon, 31 for Patrick Taylor through those 2 games. Emmanuel Wilson, just a handful of touches, a handful of routes. So clearly the third option in this group. So, all right. So I think that's it. Actually, Jair Alexander, cornerback for Green Bay, has missed the last couple of games. Their best corner by far, one of the top corners in the league, most would say. He's back tonight. That will certainly help in defending Devontae Adams. So Jair Alexander back for Green Bay tonight. All right, so we've got a couple questions in the chat. Jose Morales, how does Green Bay rank against the run? They seemingly have ranked near the bottom of the league since I've been alive against the run. Josh Jacobs has a pretty good matchup tonight with them. And then EGS Comics says, would you use any of these defenses in the flex in this game? That's a fantastic question. As we get to the high risk section, I'll go more in depth here. But because, and this is especially true for both sites, because we now have the glaring value of A.J. Dillon at $4,600. Before, we had projected them under 20% owned before the Aaron Jones news, and rightfully so. As a result, as people were looking for values, because down here, under the kickers and defenses, no one has a true role. The Raiders are pretty tight in how they run their offense. I mean, it's literally just Adams, Jacobs, Jacoby Myers, and that's basically it. And then Green Bay has some rotational guys, but now with Watson fully healthy, they won't see many snaps as well. So there wasn't much ownership down here. So people would have had to have flocked to the kickers primarily and the defenses. But now with Dillon at 4,600, that gives you a guy that you can play heavily in this range. We naturally lowered our projected ownership on the kickers and defenses as a result, which means we'll get both defenses under 15% for sure, probably under 10%. And I think with Jordan Love, young in his career, Jimmy G is known to implode a time or two. The defenses are fantastic high-risk plays tonight at such low ownership. On a slate where we're looking for differentiation, it's tough to find guys who will see the field and be under 10% owned. The defense is certainly qualifying. They're probably top of the list. Wick says, would you roster Taylor and Dillon in the flex or only roster together if Dillon and captain? I think I would only, like my first thought would be only in the flex. Because ideally, you want Dillon to get all of the work if you play him as your captain. And you don't want Taylor or Wilson to cannibalize any of his opportunities. So if you play Dillon in the captain, you probably don't want either one of those guys in the flex. I would prefer to play both of the Dillon and the captain, either one of those guys in the flex. I would prefer to play both in the flex where they don't have to ceiling or hit their maximum value to win GPPs. Now, granted, at just $200, we've seen it time and time again where Dillon could be the optimal captain. And if the top guys score enough and nobody scores enough in this lower range, that Patrick Taylor could be optimal with like 2 points. And that doesn't really take away from A.J. Dillon's ceiling. So this is a long way of saying I wouldn't really restrict how I use those guys in my lineups with A.J. Dillon. Michael says, I think most people will go to Renfrow, Hooper, or Wicks. I think they will too. And I just don't think there's a need to. These guys, Renfrow, actually did get 4 targets last week for a change, but maybe that was a result of Aiden O'Connell starting. But while he has seen his slot snaps increase since week 1, Renfrow is just not being targeted. It's Devontae Adams, it is Jacoby Myers, and it's Josh Jacobs. Renfrow at 2,200 might see a couple of targets, but this is not the Hunter Renfrow of the past. And then, yes, I think people will play Austin Hooper, but we'll be lucky if he gets a single target at $600. They're not throwing to their tight ends. And then Dontavian Wicks, people will look at last week and see the snaps and routes that he ran. But that was with Christian Watson on a snap count. Watson fully expected back to his full role tonight. Jaden Reed's the number 3. Dobbs the other outside receiver. That leaves very minimal snaps for Dontavian Wicks. Not a guy. I think we're more box score chasing and not really. I hope the field does play it. Let's put it that way. All right. Let's talk about low risk contests. 50-50s, double ups, head-to-heads. Contests where you just have to beat half the field to double your money. Generally, if you've read our showdown guide, you've watched these videos, you know what we try to do. We try to lock up all the scoring by playing quarterbacks and running backs, or we play the values. Fortunately, we can definitely do that tonight, especially on DraftKings, right? If you played, let's look at it this way. Let's just say you like Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, both quarterbacks, A.J. Dillon. All right, we can't do this. That's a little too much if we try to get all these guys. If we could do that, we could just shut down DFS. However, if you swap one of these guys, let's say if you put A.J. Dillon, who's clearly underpriced, a value and the starting running back, we put him at the captain spot. And let's get Devontae Adams in the flex. Generally, on these slates, as if you've been watching our videos, you know that Sometimes we have to make a decision between a quarterback and a stud receiver like Devontae Adams. We actually don't have to make that decision tonight if we go this route. So find your favorite sub 2K player, and you have a very easy low-risk lineup here. If you want to play Devontae in the captain or Josh Jacobs in the captain, and I think that's right. That's certainly okay, as they have a high chance of leading the slate in scoring. I think you probably want to fade Garoppolo in this sense, as we'll get some of his production through Devontae Adams. Let's put A.J. Dillon here. And now we have 4250. We can play kickers and defense, whoever we want. I think it's very simple, low risk tonight. A couple different avenues, depending on your preference and how you like your lineups and how they shake out. But I think it's pretty easy on DraftKings. Now, FanDuel, we have to make a little bit of a tougher decision. Let's go back over here to FanDuel. Now, Devontae Adams is technically only 14K, which is, I guess, a value when you think about what Devontae Adams' ceiling is. So if we play Love, we play Jacobs, we play Adams, 7750 per player. Now we play A.J. Dillon, just 5,500. Is Patrick Taylor? Not that we want to play him there. He's 6K. Okay. So not only do we have to make a decision between Adams and a quarterback, that still doesn't even get us all the way there in low-risk contests on FanDuel. Your best bet is to probably leave out one of these guys, or sorry, both of these guys in Adams and Garoppolo. But then again, Adams is $2,000 cheaper than Jordan Love. Maybe the path is this. 8K. Now you can play one of the tight ends or Hunter Renfrow. Luke Musgrave's probably the best option. He's the most popular option in here. So this is probably the best low-risk option, but you still have to fade Jordan Love, which feels kind of unsafe to me as the more projectable of the two quarterbacks. But if you're going to play low-risk on FanDuel, I think this is how you have to go. All right, let's see here. There's a couple more comments in the chat. If you guys have questions, comments, throw them in the chat box. I will happily answer them. I'll probably be here till 6:15 or so. Generally, these showdown videos, they're only 15 to 20 minutes long when I pre-record them in the mornings. But we'll sit around, answer some questions, talk a little more in depth. Maybe hop over to the lineup builder, show you some of the projected ownership for tonight, some of the rules I'm thinking about. If you guys want to see that, put it in the chat. Let me know. So, let's see. Chris in the chat, what's up? He says, Vegas 5-1 with the Green Bay running back too. Yeah, that's certainly an option, right? You bring, I think, despite Dobbs' performance recently, despite Watson and his return to an elevated role, despite A.J. Dillon's price, I think builds will primarily be more Las Vegas heavy just because people want to jam in Jacobs and Adams. And due to their pricing and due to Dillon and some of the other values, people will do this, and I think it'll be pretty popular. And then we'll see pretty high ownership on these guys because that's what people want to jam in. And because of that, we'll see more Raiders-heavy builds, especially on DraftKings. Yeah, and I noticed that too as I was building my lineups. CA Premium says Myers seems to be getting overlooked. Yeah, I agree. Myers had a great week one, had the concussion late in the game, but still a guy that they're using a lot in this offense. And Jacoby Myers at $4,200 less than Devontae Adams. Can he outscore him? Likely no, but can he? Yes, he did in week one, right? And if Jair Alexander can in any way limit Devontae Adams or his shoulder limits him whatsoever, Myers will be the beneficiary at a fraction of the ownership. So I certainly like that call, CA Premium. Sean says, I exclusively played Dallas Onslaughts last night. Please help me think of more Galaxy Brain plays for tonight. I clearly hate money. Yeah, I didn't go as far as that much, Sean, but I feel your pain. I've had some bad ideas in the past and see them play out like the Dallas game played out last night. Don't play Adams or Jacobs tonight if you hate money. That's the don't hate money play of the night. Mobile Auto Detailing with Immaculate Perceptions. Fantastic name. Thank you for showing up. Who are you leaning for your captain? Yeah, it's a good question. So let's talk about high-risk contests here. Actually, let's answer Hoffa's question, and then I'll answer that question. Mobile Auto Detailing. Patrick Taylor versus E. Wilson ownership. To get different, if you think Green Bay playing from behind, D. Wicks is an option. Good question. We have Patrick Taylor like 50. Let's go to the lineup builder, and I'll show you what we have here. So this is the OccupyFantasy.com lineup builder. This is on DraftKings. OccupyFantasy.com/lineup builder is where you can learn more if you're not a member or have access. The link is in the description below. And if we look at the flex position and we look at running backs and we sort by ownership, we have Emmanuel Wilson projected for 0%. He'll probably be 1 or 2%, honestly. And then Patrick Taylor for 15%. So if you have some reason to believe that Emmanuel Wilson is the guy over Patrick Taylor as the running back too, aka you're a Green Bay beat reporter or a fan, then you get a fraction. You get basically no ownership on Wilson. So interesting. As far as Green Bay playing from behind, Wicks is the clear number 4 now. And if Watson is playing a ton of snaps, like maybe Wicks gets 8 or 10 routes. Is that enough to get there? Let's look at receivers in the lineup builder. Wicks we have at 4% at $200. I guess so. I mean, honestly, if he gets 1 or 2 catches, even if it's in garbage time or in relief of one of these other receivers, that can probably outscore Taylor and Wilson. So while he might be a little over-owned compared to what his perceived role is, he still has a high chance to outscore these other guys in his price range. So I truly don't hate it. Jimmy G captain ownership. What are typical percents of quarterback to be an optimal captain? I don't have the updated numbers off the top of my head. I'll have to check our records, but somewhere in the 8 to 12% range is how often quarterbacks are captain. The field has certainly picked up on that over the past at least 5 years, especially since I won my million back in 2019, where Tom Brady was the most popular captain in the Super Bowl. That slate, the field has certainly picked up on it a lot more. And we have Garoppolo under 10% projected captain ownership tonight, as he should be. All right, back to DraftKings. And Mobile's question about who you're leaning to for your captain. Let's talk about it. High risk. So these are leagues, satellites, GPPs. A lot of you tune in for the GPPs, the biggest prizes on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Who are we playing? What are the strategies that we want to play for high risk contests? So right now we have Adams and Jacobs both projected for 20% plus. Typically, if you play a very popular captain like that, you want to find 1 to 2 super unpopular players to play with them that differentiates your lineup some. Because if not, you're competing with tons and tons of people. If you consider you're playing this contest, 132,000 people, 20% of people have Devontae Adams. That is 26,000 lineups that you're playing against that also have Devontae Adams at captain. So if you're going to differentiate, you got to find some low-owned guys. Unfortunately, on this slate, there aren't very many. Like some of the Chiefs slates, we have low-owned receivers, even though they never do anything. Some of these other slates, we have low-owned trash plays that we can mix and match. Certainly, we can do it here, but it's not very likely. On slates like that, I think last night was an example as well, I'd prefer just to play lower-owned captains. McCaffrey last night was 20, 30, 40% in some contests at captain, but we didn't have a ton of differentiation spots in the flex. I would rather just play McCaffrey in flex and play a lower-owned captain, and that is a much better way to play these types of contests, especially the smaller GPPs. So that's how I'm leaning tonight. If I had to pick one captain, it wouldn't be Jacobs, it wouldn't be Adams, it would be one of these other guys. Now, Romeo Doubs sticks out a lot to me. This is the first angle. And I know Bismo wrote about this in our daily plug. I linked it. It's actually linked in the description below, but it's also linked at the very top of the chat if you scroll up. Romeo Doubs is one of our underperforming wide receivers. If you're new to Occupy Fantasy, you're new to fantasy football. Basically, we look at how receivers' opportunities have looked over the past 3 weeks, where they've been targeted, how often they've been targeted, how deep their targets are, and come up with a calculation of how many fantasy points they're expected to score based on the typical output from that kind of usage. And guys who way underperform, whether it's missing touchdowns, just not catching the passes that they're supposed to catch, whether they're overthrown balls, drops, whatever it is. Guys who have underperformed, they make our underperforming wide receiver list. Historically, these guys have had pretty huge games at a higher than typical rate when they're on the list. And Dobbs is one of those guys. I know there have been some tweets out there about Dobbs being the preferred target over Christian Watson when Jordan Love has been in the lineup. And if that's the case, we actually get Dobbs at a little bit lower ownership tonight. He's a little bit pricier. Most projection systems have Watson back to his full-time role and therefore higher projected than Dobbs. But we have the maybe budding friendship between he and Jordan Love and his underperforming wide receiver status. And Dobbs, we have, let's go to the lineup builder. We have him projected for 25% in the flex. And if we look at captain, just 5% captain, and you see the little underperforming wide receiver indicator here for Dobbs. So Dobbs is probably my favorite high-risk captain, just based on all the data that we have. Chachi says, thanks for the broadcast. Great information as always. Appreciate you guys. Thank you. If you're not subscribed already, make sure you are. We do these videos for Showdown every Monday and Thursday. Typically, they're pre-recorded in the mornings, and I put them out before lunchtime. That way you have all day to consume them. Sometimes we'll go live. The best way to get notified when they're posted and or when we change the schedule and go live is to be subscribed here on YouTube. It's free to do. Helps us out. Obviously, the more subscribers we get, that's great. Helps you out know when the videos are posted. We're also like 8 subscribers away from 7,000 here on YouTube. Pretty big mark for us, especially in the DFS as one of the smaller channels. So if you're not subscribed and you want to help us hit that 7K mark, hit that subscribe button below. We'd appreciate it. Um, Hoffa says Dobbs also played at Nevada, I believe. Homecoming narrative. Is that true? Did he play at Nevada? I actually don't know where he played. But this is in Nevada, in Las Vegas. So a little homecoming action for Romeo Dobbs if you want that extra bump. All right, back over to DraftKings. What else do we have for differentiation? Guys I'm thinking about using. If you look at expected fantasy points, Adams has had some big games. Let's just pull it up here. So 15, 45, 20, and 12. Obviously missed basically a half of last week. Despite the 45-point explosion in week 3, 15 was last week. So even 15 points in a half of action, basically. 45 points in week 3. Despite that explosion, his expected fantasy points and his actual fantasy points is basically even. So what he's been averaging is pretty much what we can expect from Adams moving forward, which is crazy for someone averaging that many fantasy points at 23 a game. Jacobs, meanwhile, a little underperforming. Hadn't scored as many touchdowns as we might have thought. Just one touchdown so far, despite 34, 43, 62 rushing attempts. And look at all these targets. That's the crazy thing. He's been using the passing game a ton. So while he's going to be popular, I think if I had personally had to make the decision tonight on which guy I want, it would be Jacobs against this Green Bay defense that just has never been able to stop the run. And Jacobs due for a little more regression in the touchdown department, plus his ability to play in the passing game. Jacobs game script proof. I guess Adams is technically too, but with the shoulder, with Jair Alexander, with Jacobs expecting a little regression, I would choose Jacobs over the two personally, and I would prefer to get overweight on him if I had to pick one of them to get overweight on. Let's see. Lazy Joe says, let's go 7K subs. Thank you, Lazy Joe. Appreciate you. Jose Morales, if you're only playing one single entry lineup on DK, who would you play in the captain spot? Yeah, it would be Dobbs. I assume the single entry is one of those 1,000, 2,000 plus player contests where you're, even though it's a single entry and you're on a level playing field, you still have to beat thousands of lineups. Very long horizon view of reaching your expected value. You're not going to win those very often. I'm talking about a lifetime. I would play the low-owned guy in Dobbs in those types of contests. Hawk Dark, thoughts of 2-4 Green Bay Dobbs captain paired with Love and all the Raiders. Yeah, I like that too. That really makes a ton of sense, right? Ideally, you want all of the action to flow through Dobbs if you play him as your captain. Dylan fails in that regard. A popular player fails. That boosts your lineup some too. And then just the guaranteed volume on the Raiders side between Jacobs, Adams, Myers, kicker, defense, whatever it is. So I do like that a lot. Yeah, EGS says, can we take a look at FanDuel since the prices differ? I mostly play there as flex plays. Yeah, let's talk about FanDuel a little bit here. Let me pull it over, and I'll answer some more of these questions. All right, I got FanDuel up, and I'll talk about this in a second. Let's answer the rest of these questions, and then I got you EGS for FanDuel. Miguel says, what's your feeling on two quarterbacks? Generally, they get there a little bit less than they're actually played. Tonight, it's easier to play them, but I think for me personally, I would rather, if I had to pick, I would rather just play one and get overweight on whether it's Jacobs and playing Love in the receivers, which is my preferred method, or getting overweight on Garoppolo, Myers, Adams, and playing A.J. Dillon. I think that's my preferred method, playing just one quarterback tonight. Watson in the captain says Hoffa. He will either go for 25 or 2.5. Perfect high-risk captain then. That's what we want. Matt Wilson, do you think Taylor assumes a third down pass catching role? He started to take it over, not take it over, but play there more in week 3. Whereas week 2, when that was the first game that Aaron Jones was out, Dillon mostly dominated opportunities, and Emmanuel Wilson actually played a little more, especially in the run game. Taylor could, but the coaching staff clearly has never been impressed with Taylor that much. I don't know, man. I think it's tough to say. Could he? Yes. Is it likely? I would say no. Terry Morse, Dobbs or Adams in season long? Yeah, I mean, let's just play Adams. We're not playing DFS pricing here. Adams clearly the better player, better projection. So play Devontae Adams in your season long lineups, Terry. If I play Jacobs in captain, do I fade Adams? I don't think necessarily, just because the volume is so concentrated on that side. I think it makes a ton of sense if you're building out game scripts. If Jacobs gets his touchdown regression, Adams likely doesn't hit value. But if the Raiders win this game handily, then it's harder for an Adams plus Jacobs lineup not to get there. So it just depends on the type of story you're telling, how you think this game plays out. Cody says, anything viable 3K or lower on DraftKings? Good question. I really don't think so. I mean, there are guys, and we're gonna play them. But if we look at DraftKings, and I promise EGS, I will go back to FanDuel here in a second after I finish these questions. If we look at the flex spot, we remove the roster positions, we sort by salary here. Yeah, you guys can see this. Okay. Under 3K. So we have Hunter Renfrow, 4 targets last week, basically running 29 cardio routes per game out of the slot the past couple of games. He'll get a couple targets. That's about it. Will he do much with it? Not unless there is an Adams or Myers injury. And even in that case, he didn't do anything in week 2 when Myers was out. DeGuara saw some targets last week, but that was because Luke Musgrave was concussed before halftime. DeGuara came in. If Musgrave stays healthy, fingers crossed, DeGuara a target or 2. Torrey, they do like. This coaching staff trusts Samori Torrey. I know everyone wants to play Dontavian Wicks. Torrey, they've drawn up some deep shots for him. Again, you need a 140-yard touchdown catch for him to value. It's very unlikely, but he's 1% owned. So Torrey may be in the largest contest. Abdullah will play some passing down snaps, but really not playing that much in any game script. Austin Hooper sees the field a ton. Going to play the most out of any guy below 3K. You'll be lucky if he gets a single target tonight. So I understand why he's popular because he's just out there, but you just pray he gets a goal line touchdown look. That's the only way. All right. Next, we have, going to the page 2, we're digging deep here. Patrick Taylor, we've talked about already, the most viable of this group. Dontavian Wicks will play less tonight assuredly with Dobbs locked in, and then Christian Watson back to his full role. Kraft in the same boat as DeGuara. Won't play much, won't see much action if Musgrave is healthy, which he is. And then we have these other guys. Wilson, Meyer, Carter, Jacob Johnson, maybe a target. I mean, it's slim pickings down here under 3K, Cody. BAP, thoughts on Hooper and Musgrave and GPP? Yeah, Hooper, I think, if he catches a touchdown and kills us, so be it. I would just prefer not to play Hooper, really, in any contest. When his ceiling is like 2 catches for 12 yards, 3 catches for 30 yards, I'm good on that. Musgrave, meanwhile, is in the same boat as the kickers and defenses. Let's go back to page 1, where if you missed or if you heard the conversation at the top, how kickers and defenses are a little bit lower owned now because of A.J. Dillon's value at 4,600. Same goes for Musgrave. We got him under 20% in the flex. He would have been over 20% assuredly had Dillon not gained the starting role with the Aaron Jones news. So Luke Musgrave, fantastic pivot away from A.J. Dillon for sure. Chris Brown says, nice name. Can we play or can we not play Taylor captain with Adams, Jacobs, Love, Jimmy G, and Myers? And yeah, you can. Actually, I was talking to Moose, our other co-founder data guy here. I think this is a decently viable small field lineup. Would I play it? No, because the odds are if you do play it and someone else has his idea, it will be duplicated. And it's not that good of a lineup to be duplicated. But the lineup that Chris is talking about is this. Let me find Patrick Taylor here. Like, just hope Patrick Taylor gets a couple points, and it allows you to fit something like this: Dobbs, Watson, Myers, whoever you want to fit here. Like, it's very viable. I just don't think I'll do it because I think if people do play Taylor captain, this is the lineup they're playing assuredly. So it's not really that different, despite Taylor's captain ownership being 1 or 2%, whatever it is. Plus, like, the odds are he scores 3 points, and if Adams or Jacobs or Watson or Dobbs score 25 plus, this lineup will be dead. Shogun says, what about Dillon at captain? Yeah, that's interesting, especially on FanDuel. So now let's talk about FanDuel. Okay, so we've seen this situation in the past. Jack, who you've seen on these live Monday videos, who's won a lot of money in Showdown and short slates. Showdown, most of his wins have come on FanDuel. And a strategy he likes to use, which is incredibly plus EV, is that when you have a guy who's mispriced, like A.J. Dillon is tonight, technically. I mean, he's not some, like, complete mispricing, right? But he's undervalued, for sure, for his role. 10K. We see them end up with heavy flex ownership, but 1 to 3% at MVP, right? So if they're so mispriced and everyone's rushing to play them in the flex, you can gain leverage on a very popular player by playing them in the MVP spot. Hope that the touchdown regression comes. Remember, if you missed it at the top of the show, 0 touchdowns on 47 touches for Dillon in 2023. That's going to change at some point. Why not let it be tonight if you play him heavy in the MVP spot on FanDuel? And the same goes for DraftKings, right? He'll be 60, 70% overall in DraftKings, but only 10%, maybe a little less at captain. That's probably more appropriate because of the salary savings and the salary multiplier at captain. Love playing Dillon at MVP on FanDuel, though, based on that strategy we discussed. Brent says, which defense is more likely to score a touchdown? God, I mean, flip a coin. It's not super predictive. I would say Jordan Love has been a little more reckless with the ball than Jimmy G, so I would say the Raiders in that regard. But again, we're guessing here on that. Both are great plays, both defenses in high-risk contests. All right, guys, 6 o'clock. I will stick around for 5 or 10 more minutes if you have any more questions. Let's see here. Let me get some water. I've been talking for 30 straight minutes. I'll stick around for a little bit longer, maybe 5, 10 minutes. If you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. Again, make sure you are subscribed. We're trying to hit 7K subscribers here on YouTube. It's free to do. Helps us out. We're transparent. We know it helps us, but it does help you because you get notified when you go live. It's a great, easy, simple way to show your support and helps you out with the scheduling as well. Give us a thumbs up if you like the content. It helps us too. Shogun, Dobbs or Watson? Yeah, if you missed it, Watson, clear ceiling, right? We saw it last year. Let me fix this light real quick. Clear ceiling for Watson. Mix the names together. Watson, based on his usage last year. But Dobbs is underperforming, has a connection with Jordan Love. I think, given the ownership discrepancy, I'll say Dobbs tonight. Patrick, if there was a quarterback you left off, who would it be? I think it would be Jimmy G, because I do like playing some of the leverage with the Green Bay guys. I mean, it's leverage outside of Watson, who is, let's go back to DraftKings, and let's go to the lineup builder here. And if we look at, where is it? Okay. Christian Watson, 35% owned. But you have Jaden Reed, 10%, Dobbs, 25%, Musgrave, 19%. Tons of leverage in playing the Green Bay guys in this game, playing Green Bay passing heavy, and a great pivot away from the popular A.J. Dillon. Then if that's the case, you probably want to leave Garoppolo off and play Jordan Love with those guys. Chris says Hooper or Meyer. I'm telling you, dude, just don't play either one. Like, unless you're thrilled with a single target, don't play those guys. I would say Hooper over Meyer. But that is just one target compared to 0. What's up, Rod? Rod 1976. Who's your favorite high-risk trash player in tournaments? Great question. I'm a sucker for Samori Toure. We called him out last year, and he did catch a long touchdown from Aaron Rodgers. But I do think he'll see the field just as much, if not similarly, if not more, than Dontavian Wicks, which isn't a ton, granted. But as I said 10 minutes ago, the coaching staff likes him. May see a shot player or two. I'll say Samori Toure at 1% favorite high-risk trash play. Sean Hart, if you're playing 150 lineups, do you ever mix in the backup quarterbacks? Great question. DraftKings, I do not, right? Because if we look here, we see Sean Clifford, Brian Hoyer are 6K. And we've seen, I mean, look at the Zach Wilson game in week 1 when Aaron Rodgers left after 4 plays. Granted, Wilson sucked. But it's much harder on DraftKings where a guy is 6K. On FanDuel, however, if we look at Clifford, 5K, the minimum price, and we look at Hoyer, 5K, the minimum price. We've actually run studies on this, right? If you had the bankroll and you had the patience, you will certainly be profitable over the course of an entire season and certainly over the course of a lifetime. If every single showdown slate, you just played 75 lineups with one backup quarterback, 75 lineups with the other backup quarterback, over the course of the season, you will be profitable because we see a handful of times per season at 5K minimum price. All they have to do is throw a couple of passes potentially to be in the optimal lineup. And we've seen it happen time and time again every single season. So mix in, sure. If you had the bankroll, which again, it depends on the contest and your risk reward and your ability to be patient throughout 18 weeks or lifetime, it's positive EV to play backup quarterbacks on FanDuel. Let's see here. Patrick says, would you keep Adams if playing Love? Yeah, because Adams can get there on like 20 targets, 15 targets without Jimmy G doing much. So it certainly can do that. Mitchell Tyler says, Musgrave or Reed? What contest? What's the rest of your lineup look like? It really depends. Prefer Musgrave probably. But, I mean, Reed is also 10% owned, and I like the ownership discount if the rest of my lineup is pretty chalky. Cody says, last one, Dillon flops, leading to Patrick Taylor getting the bulk of the work, maybe even a goal line touchdown. Dillon's going to be their goal line guy. Like, they're not going to just, if he's performing poorly, just take him out and put Patrick Taylor in the goal line. That's not going to happen. Dillon's their guy. I understand people want to play Taylor. They want to find reasons to play Taylor or Wilson. Dillon has not been great this year. But he's due for some touchdown regression, and the team likes him, obviously. So you can play Taylor. Maybe he outscores Dillon, sure. But I don't think we need to write any fan fiction on how that happens. All right. What else we got here? Any more questions, guys? 6:04. Another minute or two. Final thoughts here. This is FanDuel. I do want to get back to EGS's question. So we have Adams, Jacobs, Love all over 25% projected ownership for the MVP spot. If you're a really good showdown player, you have some simulations, you could probably equally play those guys and find the best lineups to play with them. Personally, and Bismo, our showdown writer, wrote this in the Daily Plug today. You're better off Xing one of those guys, whether it's Love, Jacobs, or Adams, going heavy on the other two, and then mixing in some lower owned guys. I like playing Jimmy G at sub 10% MVP here. If he is able to throw touchdowns to guys not named Devontae Adams. We talked about Watson and Dobbs, their big playability, under 5% MVP. And we talked about the Dillon move, obviously. So I like mixing all of these non-Adams and Jacobs guys in, just realizing that you can be buried pretty easily once Adams or Jacobs scores a touchdown or two. But I do think it's a great slate for it. As far as values go on FanDuel, Kicker's defense is pretty normal here. Musgrave will be the most popular at 8K. Again, Hooper sees the field, but when you can get one target from Hooper or you can get 5 targets from Musgrave, everyone's going to play Musgrave, and rightfully so. Hooper is just way too expensive compared to DraftKings, compared to anywhere, really, given his target share. Quincy, if Dobbs captain, do you flex another Green Bay wide receiver? That's a great question. Small field, I would not. So let's go to DraftKings. So if you play Dobbs at captain, play Jordan Love with them. Ideally, you want Dobbs to cannibalize, get all of the opportunity, Green Bay. 100 yards bonus, touchdown. If that's the case, that likely means, just unless, well, just think about it this way, right? You need, in order for Dobbs to do that and to be the optimal captain, you probably also need Jaden Reed at 6,200, pretty pricey, and Watson 7,800 to fail to meet expectations if you want Dobbs to do this. If both Dobbs crushes and Reed or Watson crushes, that means Love is likely the optimal captain at their prices. Now, if you played like Wicks or somebody else down here, or if you played like, let's use a different example, like if you used Adams, Garoppolo, and Renfro's only 2,200, that's a different story because you don't have to do as much to hit value. But when the secondary receivers and his teammates are priced above 5K, above 6K, that's when you want to limit to playing just one if you use them in the captain. So it's a really good question from Quincy there. Yeah, I would play 0 Green Bay wide receivers in the flex if I played Dobbs at captain, or Watson, or Reed. If you're playing 150, you can let it in some because we do see some weird lineups win like that. But I think for any other contest type or your hand building, I would certainly avoid it. Let's see, Shogun. Oh, you're just asking me to build your lineup now. John says any value in fading Devontae doesn't feel good, even being banged up. Yeah, it's not gonna feel great, John. let's just put it on the table, right? It's not gonna feel great fading Devontae Adams because we've all been there, or at least I have. And you watch him, gets 15 targets, scored a touchdown, 140 yards, and then you just lose your money. However, with Jair back, being banged up, with Green Bay's rushing defense being what it is, I think there's a much higher chance that Jacobs outscores him tonight. If there is a slate to fade Devontae Adams, it's tonight. So I'm with you. I think it's a good idea. Maybe not in 100% of your lineups, but if you have a high risk-reward tolerance, certainly you can. Nigel, 20 entry max FanDuel MVP. So 20 entries. I would probably go with just 1 to 2 MVPs there. Good question. Let's go back to FanDuel. 20 max. Now, assuming this is a larger contest, right? 20 max, 20, 30,000 plus people. I would probably play. Again, you're going to lose most nights when you're playing 20 max, right? You only have 20 shots at a super large field. I would probably play Dillon, Dobbs, Watson, and then your choice of Love, Jacobs, Adams, whichever one you prefer. Eric Press says Abdullah or Taylor. Abdullah might catch a pass or two. That's about it. Taylor should see more work. All right, guys, I think that'll do it. 6:09, final minute here. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's free to do. Like the video. Just let us know that you want us to continue to do these types of videos. Let us know what you think about live stream versus pre-recorded. We got some comments last time when we did this for the 2-game slate. Either comment on the video, DM us, email us, however you want to get in touch with us. Let us know how you feel about pre-recorded versus live. We just need to change our schedules up a little bit if one preference is greater than the other. But you got to let us know. We'd like to do what we can to help you guys the most. So just let us know. Any final questions? Our Discord's open, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. Link in the description below. Staff will be in there through the night. Daily Plug is up, occupyfantasy.com. Our writer Bismo does a great job. So if you like what you saw in this video, make sure you go check that out. It has rankings for different contest types and sites. overall slate notes, lineup construction tips for specific contests, both general and slate specific strategies. Basically, everything you saw here, more in depth and more organized in a written format, as little as $7 a week. And you saw the Occupy Fantasy lineup builder up here, showed you earlier. As little as $11 per week allows you to build up to 300 lineups using our optimal lineup criteria, using all the custom rules that are pre-built. Let me just show you really quickly if you haven't done it. You can choose all these rules on how to build your lineups. Use our Occupy model values. Really build profitable lineups for showdowns. An incredible tool for showdown lineups. OccupyFantasy.com/lineup builder is where you can learn more. All right, guys, that'll do it for this video. Thank you, as always, for watching. I am Brian, at Brian Jester, FF on Twitter. We're at Occupy Fantasy. I think that's it. Good luck and enjoy tonight's Packers and Raiders showdown slate.